All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Joe Gorapesic, and the lesson I'm going to be sharing with all of you is about A Raisin in the Sun, which is one of the great African American works of literature and has often been adapted into both theatrical and movie adaptations of the work. So let's just get into it and start off with a little bit of background. So A Raisin in the Sun follows the lives of a family living in a black housing district in the city of Chicago during some time in the 1950s. The family has lived there for an excessive amount of generations, and the house is described to be way too small for the five occupants living inside of it, excuse me, and shows heavy signs of wear, such as the carpets being weathered down and there not being enough places to sleep, causing disgruntlement in the woodwork and such. And they bought this house with the purpose of being a transition apartment, which served as a touchstone, uh, hopefully leading towards the family's dream of owning their own home. And so the main characters of this work, there are five of them that I believe to be denoted as main characters. And so we're going to start with Ruth. Ruth is possibly the main character, and she is the wife of Walter and the mother of Travis. She is noted to be objectively beautiful in her, but shows physical signs of age and disappointment while only being in her early 30s. This is described to have come about through her lack of dreams being pursued and accomplished, something that is obviously, as I've already said a little bit, one of the bigger driving forces of the novel. Her life inside the house they live in increasingly shows to have crushed her spirit, as the dreams she once had have suffocated inside of the household they live in. And so for a background of Walter, he is the husband of Ruth, the father of Travis, son of Mama, and brother to Benitha, characters that are going to be talked about a little later. He is described to be quirky and sporadic, often rising and lowering his volume level as well as his excitement and general tone through what he is saying. He can be pushed down very easily, but also gets very excited when talking about what he dreams to accomplish. And in contrast to Ruth, Walter has not yet given up on his dreams, and in fact is primarily driven by his desire to be a successful black business owner during the time period. His ambition clashes with Ruth's sentiment that the days to dream have already passed them by, as they must now put the care of their child, Travis, who was previously mentioned, in the forefront of their interests. And so there are three more characters I believe to be considered main characters as the story sort of continually evolves around their progression in the story. The first of which I'm going to talk about is Mama, and Mama is the elder of the group and mother to Walter and Benitha. Her presence in the novel emphasizes that of wisdom, and her character physically is denoted to be one of beauty. Despite her age, her presence as one of calming and wisdom and just her overall like stature in the household is believed by the third person narrator to be objectively beautiful. And so, as with the others, she struggles to cope with the outlook of their residents. However, her role as elder in the group pushes her into wanting to help her family realize their own dreams at any cost, as she herself has been described to have long passed the period where she could realize her own. Benitha is the youngest of the middle group at the age of 20. She is a sister to Walter and the daughter to Mama. Benitha has dreams of becoming a doctor, and despite being a black woman in the 1950s, is actively in school to become such as her dreams are described to be. She embodies an academical sort of intelligence that marks her as an outsider from her family, of which never received an education to the extent that she has, possibly growing up in an only, if having any school, growing up in a black school community, which, as history shows us, were not as adequate as white schools. And her presence as being educated eventually becomes a main layer of tension between her and the rest of her family. And so the last character I want to talk about is Travis, who is the youngest of all the characters and the son of Walter and Benitha. His role in the play is relatively small. He's only a child, so he is not yet aware of the suffocating situation his family resides in. As previously said, like the black being a member of a black housing district in an area that is not so well off. And just as a character here, he serves as another focus of the text. However, as his parents work towards creating a brighter future for their son, as their dreams eventually grow out. And so for the next little bit of information, I wanted to show what these characters might look like. As I said before, this text has often been adapted into both theatrical, dramatical productions, as well as TV and movie productions. And so the picture on the left here is what I believe to be probably more of a theatrical adaptation and possibly a casting photo of such adaptation. I'm going to go through the characters from top left to right to bottom left to right. I believe Benitha to be the character on the left, as she is dressed very differently and shown to be not as attractive, denoted to be as attractive as the other characters, with Walter being in the middle, Ruth being on the right, Mama being sat on, and Travis doing the sitting. And on the right here, I think is a little more closer to the book or original text adaptation, with on the far left here being Benitha, being denoted by, again, being an outsider by her more casual attire, with her kind of plaid shirt and jeans, with in the middle and the back being Ruth, and Walter being the big hugger of the group, as well as Mama being the one being hugged. And so now I want to get into the plot a little bit. The work opens with the audience soon being told that Mama's husband has recently passed away. And as a result of this, the family is due a $10,000 check from his life insurance policy. This soon becomes a driving force behind the plot, and how the characters interact with this large amount of money coming into them. Walter believes that Mama should give him the money so that he can open a liquor store with a few of his friends, a business endeavor he believes could eventually position his family out of their long-standing poverty. Ruth, however, believes that they should save the money and instead use it to pay for Benitha's education and later for Travis so that they can live the progressive lives that Walter and Ruth could not. The family struggles with this large sum of money, especially being a large sum of money for the 1950s, for a majority of the plot. I wanted to dive into Benitha as a subplot a little bit because it's not a main focus of the novel, but again touches on themes of being an African American during the time period. So Benitha's involvement in the story tackles a little bit of a different aspect of being an African American during the time period. As I said, at first she is romantically involved with George Murchison, one of the very few wealthy members of the African American community during the time period. Her educated background soon draws conflict with who Murchison is as a person. She believes his wealth has led him to conform to white culture instead of embracing his African heritage. This eventually leads her to leave him romantically and become involved with a black intellectual this time, Joseph Esagai, who shares her desire to embrace her roots. And her story concludes with them eventually moving to the continent of Africa together. Their simple move is the extent to what the readers are informed of, as their new life is scarcely elaborated on. And so, with Beneath the story concluding, I wanted to return to the rest of the characters' ending of their own story, which similarly has a not so concrete conclusion. The rest of the family shares the same sort of open-ended conclusion, as I said. With the decision of the money, Mama decides to put a large portion of the money down on a house in an attempt to finally free them from their desirable living condition. However, the house they eventually choose resides in a white neighborhood, which soon results in a white member of that community offering to return their investment on the house, and then some, as a bonus to set them right, to dodge the tension that would occur from their family moving into an all-white neighborhood. And so as this is unfolding, Mama also caves to Walter's desires to be a business owner, which very quickly leads to his friends and business partners losing the money, something that Ruth was scared of from the beginning, as she describes Walter's friends as being good for nothing. This effectively puts the final hole in the dreams of both Ruth and Walter, as they no longer have the money to escape their long-standing poverty. And the novel finally concludes with a final attempt to redeem themselves as they decline the offer and decide to move into the white neighborhood, hoping that the location serves as a progressive enough force to give Travis a life that they could not have.